Hi there, this is Andrea Murray of Drea Renee Knits, and this is a podcast called I'll Knit If I Want to. Thank you so much for joining me. Apparently we're going to say everything backwards today. All right, refocus. We can do this. I'm wearing my Ooey Gooey mitts. This is my final pattern release of 2025. I can't believe it. I don't know where this whole year went, but it's been a good one. And you know what I should do one of these days? I'm going to get real organized. I'm going to do like a recap of everything I made this year. Wouldn't that be so fun? My friend Chelsea, who is an amazing creative person. She sews, she knits, she weaves, she does ceramics, all the things. And she's really great about doing a monthly recap of everything she made that month. And I'm like, oh, that is such a good idea, especially because I was chatting with another friend, Alicia, about time scarcity. And one of the things that came up in that conversation was how she was saying how helpful it is to reflect. Like, I always feel like there's just not enough time in the day. Time is going so fast. I want everything to slow down. There's so much I want to do and not enough time to do it. And reflecting at the end of the day about everything that we did do. And actually, I think it's just so easy to get caught up in a world where everything is moving very quickly. We are flooded with other people's, just scratched my face, my fingernails, with other people's Instagram feeds, social media feeds, seeing everything they've done. And we forget how long, like, we might see somebody who is showing off, let's say, a lot of knits, but it still took them probably months to knit those things. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked, but all that to say, sometimes I think it's really helpful to actually reflect on what we have accomplished and what we've done, and it helps us kind of like ground and recenter our perspective. So anyways, that was just a little random tangent to get us started. Ooey Gooey mitts. So this is made out of Sukhapi, which is yarn from the Farmer's Daughter Fibers, and Sukhapi is actually the Blackfeet word for good, and it is a really good yarn. I'm remembering that right. I'm pretty sure. It is a single ply. Focus. Is it Donna? There she is. It's a single ply, slightly thick and thin yarn. It blocks out so beautifully. It like blooms in the most beautiful way. It is a very, very unique yarn, and I really love it. So I had picked these colors while I was in Montana this fall teaching, and then I had these colors in my stash because I wanted to do both fingerless mitts and full mittens. The fingerless mitts, I used a corrugated ribbing. I just didn't feel like there was enough space to do this color work situation without having a top. So that's why I did cute little corrugated. And then on the full mittens, they have the classic welt design that was part of the original Ooey Gooey sweater. So there is the mittens. And comes in 4 sizes, great gift knit, great stash buster, just a fun, sweet little pattern. I actually had not designed any mittens in a really long time, or mitts. My go-to tends to be my tinsel mitts because it's literally fingerless mitts, full mittens, and fingerless mitts with a flap, with like a mitten flap, whatever those are called. And it's sized for like the whole family, like baby to adult. So I tend to default to those a lot, but it was really fun to do something that is a little more playful and interesting than just basic mittens. I also have some show and tell, so I'm just gonna show you right now. I just made my first pair of jeans. I literally just finished them yesterday, and there you go. These are the Just My Luck jeans, and I think that they actually changed, the pattern designer changed, I think they're, oh my gosh, don't mind me, just I have my knitting bag on the floor. They were, I believe, forest and thread, but now it's Lizzie something, but I will make sure to include a link to the pattern if you're interested in them. They are a barrel. I got distracted by my knitting bag, but there's this really neat like dart situation at the knee. Don't fall, Andrea. And then there's another one up the front of the leg. And I used, so this was my first pair. I did zero modification. I didn't know what was going to happen with them. So I actually just grabbed some fabric in my stash. This is a corduroy that is so interesting. Can you see the little ridges? But there's no pile to the corduroy. It's like flat. So it's really interesting fabric. I'm very curious to see how it wears. I don't know if it'll like stretch at all, like as I'm sitting. But I have to say I'm so tickled. I bought this pattern when it was released, and I was so nervous to make them just because jeans feel less forgiving to sew than my typical elastic waist berry pants that are my go-to that I've made 1,000 times. Now I've made a whole bunch of Arthurs, and I'm generally always, I think I've only made those with an elastic waist once. But even the zipper fly, which is my preference, has half an elastic waist. So they're still forgiving in the fit, and those are really oversized. So I think just really needing this, you know, stiffer bottom weight fabric to fit well was intimidating. I know that Lizzie, the pattern designer, has a course, which I actually did get when I purchased the pattern. And to be honest, I didn't even need to use it. Like if you were really nervous, use the course. But I think the pattern's written really well where I could do it without that. And I just was able to sew a straight size. I didn't end up needing to make any, like I don't think I would change anything. And I would definitely make them again. And I think I could just make them as is. So I'm very tickled. I'm very excited. Okay, so that's my show and tell. These are my mitts. I'm going to take them off because I'm distracting myself every time I see that red flash up in this screen. But today is a good day for them. We had a big snowstorm yesterday, and now today it's like the most beautiful fluffy flakes are falling right now. I love it so much. So let's answer some questions, and then stay tuned because I've got news that I'll share at the end. All right, question number 1. Short rows in the body versus short rows closer to the neck. I am comfortable with short rows and understand that they help bring the front neckline down when used close to the top of the neck, but I'm confused how short rows in the body after the yoke do the same. It seems that short rows in the body won't change the neckline. Can you help explain why some designers add short rows much later, and if they will bring the front neckline down so it doesn't feel like it's choking me? So I feel like right out the gate, I kind of want to clarify what those short rows are really doing is instead of lowering the front neckline, they're really pushing the back neckline up, which makes the front neckline lower. And so usually a lot of times we'll see them placed at the very top. I've even done them in the collar. Sometimes they'll be below the collar, and it is a wedge. Think of kind of like, I wanted to think of like fruit, like an orange slice, but that's really like a half moon shape. It's kind of like a little crescent, a crescent moon. Think of a crescent moon. So we are doing this shape to build up a bit of the back neck, this little wedge. And then that helps lift the back neck up, which helps kind of push the front neck down a little bit so we don't feel like things are too close to the throat. Now, sometimes you're going to find those, if it's a round yoke design, you're going to see those placed under here, and the reason for it is the color work. It's the which is generally, or not just color work, but the design that's happening in the yoke. So sometimes if you look at some round yoke sweaters, you will see if somebody turns and you're looking at it from the side, you'll see like kind of a plain wedge of color above, let's say, a colorwork yoke design that in the front is butted up right to the collar. And that's because that little wedge was put in to help with fit. Some designs, you might not want that right there. There might be a very specific reason why the designer's like, no, this will look better if I put that wedge of fabric down here. It's still gonna have the same effect where it's gonna push the back up, which kind of forces the front down. Like the whole goal is to have, instead of being even front and back, we're trying to tilt it like this a bit. So that's really the only reason for it, is that they're trying to make the best choice aesthetically for whatever design's happening in the yoke. And sometimes it's split. Sometimes part of it's under the yoke and part of it's on top. And again, that's just trying to keep everything like as even, as good looking as possible. Both should help, but I know like I have two very good friends who cannot handle any, like they could not wear what I wear right now and drive them bonkers. So I know there are some people who are very sensitive to anything being close to their front neck, in which case I think what you would actually benefit is more of like a scoop neck. Like the Weekender Crew, for instance, is shaped so that there's actual shaping to create this round front neck significantly lower than just the back neck, instead of just using this little wedge of short rows. Because sometimes that little wedge of short rows is only like an inch and a half. So it's just made to like help drop it a little bit, but you might prefer something a little deeper. But that's why sometimes they're lower down, sometimes they're higher up, sometimes they're split. It's all just trying to keep the pattern as aesthetically pleasing as possible. All right. Okay. I just want to make sure there was no secondary questions in there that I missed. Okay, I have a holding yarn double question. I want to make my 4-year-old a cardigan with stash yarn, but the problem is that all of the patterns I'm considering would mean I need to hold 2 strands together. Not a big deal. I don't mind doing that. But my question is there any reason why I shouldn't hold 1 strand of 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon with a 100% acrylic yarn? I would plan to hand wash this, so that removes any washing concerns, but any other reasons this wouldn't be a good idea? So I actually touched on this last week when somebody was asking about combining different fiber content yarns in a single project. And out of the gate, yes, those are 2 very different yarns. The first thing I'm thinking of, in my experience, acrylic yarn doesn't have a lot of elasticity. It tends to be a little less bouncy. Whereas, and I imagine that MCN, which is a merino cashmere nylon, is going to be very drapey, very soft. So can you use them together? I can't, like, yes, they're very different, but I think you can. What I would do is I would knit a swatch. I would knit like, and at least like 6 by 6 inches. Like, don't just do like a little bitty boy. Give yourself like a washcloth size so that you can knit that up, see that you like them together, because that's another thing too. Maybe you happen to have 2 very similar colors, or you know they're going to pan out just fine, but there are times where we might be surprised. I've had yarns lying out next to each other that I'm like, these colors all look so beautiful together. Then I go to combine them in different ways and I'm like, oh, that does not work. So even just to see how they look together, but knit yourself a decent size swatch, wash it, let it dry, and feel it. See if you notice anything weird going on in there. I don't anticipate there being any problem, especially for a little cardigan for a 4-year-old. But I would definitely swatch to make sure you like the combo and that you don't see anything funky going on. And otherwise, it sounds like a pretty good option for a kid when you've got the superwash yarn, you've got the acrylic in there. I think the acrylics in the nylon are going to help it be hard wearing. The merino and the cashmere are going to keep it soft. Yeah, try it out. All right, question number 3. I've only made a couple of socks in my knitting journey, but I'm interested in possibly tackling them again with more success in terms of fit in the future. I would welcome any special tips you have for getting socks to fit correctly. The ones that I have made are always a little wide and end up being slipper socks. Also, what needles are you using for the Ooey Gooey socks that you have made? I see lots of people using them and I'm curious. Okay, so as far as sock fit goes, it sounds to me like it's either a gauge issue or a being the wrong size issue. So if you're consistently getting socks that feel like they're too big, you need to make sure that you're swatching and checking your gauge. If you're using fingering weight yarn, sock yarn, they are not all made equal. It is kind of shocking how drastic the difference is from skein to skein. I have sock yarns, fingering weight yarns in my collection that are 395 yards per 100 grams, and I have some that are like 450 yards per 100 grams. And which basically what that equates to is the one that's 395 yards is noticeably thicker than the one that is 450 yards for the same weight of yarn. That one's going to be noticeably thinner. So make sure, that's actually a great little tip, is to check that number when you're looking at a pattern and you see the suggested yarn. Look at the comparison, the ratio of grams to yards, and then look at your yarn label and see if they're similar, because that's going to be your first clue. Is my yarn maybe a little thicker? Is this why my socks are ending up bigger? But the next thing you need to do is you need to do a swatch, because you might just be knitting at a larger gauge than what the pattern calls for, which is why your socks are ending up a little bit bigger. Maybe you're picking the size that matches up to your foot circumference, but they're still ending up big. Probably your gauge is a little too large. And then the other thing is maybe you need to go down a size. So a lot of people like socks, we want negative ease. We generally want a little bit of negative ease in foot length and in foot circumference, because we want the socks to hug our foot. We don't want them, unless we're going for slippers or house socks, maybe we want them to be kind of scrunchy and cozy. But otherwise, if they are loose around our foot, what happens is when we wear them in our shoes, we actually get more friction moving around in the shoe, which is going to give you holes faster. So we want them to fit snugly to the foot. So that would be my first things I would tackle, is consider sizing down, really check your gauge, and make sure that you're knitting at the gauge you need to be to get the size that you're anticipating. And then as far as fit tips from there, I am not the queen of sock knitting. I really enjoy knitting socks. I feel like I've kind of found some of my sweet spots that seem to fit well, but there are definitely people out there who know all about. I have a few books. I'll tag some below. I'm gonna write myself a note for that right now. If you like craft books, I love craft books, I will put some in there that I have found helpful, and I think those are usually really great about kind of helping to understand fit for socks and tweak them for you. So I'll definitely put a few in there. Summer Lee has a great book. There's another, I think it's called Custom Fit Socks, that I really like. I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but I'll list them below for you so you can check them out. And then as far as needles, I actually have that's my knitting that I was rolling over with my chair. So I personally, am I gonna have them all? Let me just pick this up. Okay. I personally use ChowGoo and I like Magic Loop. The reason I've chatted about this before, but the reason that I like Magic Loop is I like that, especially with my interchangeable needles, if I have my collection of needle tips and cords, I have everything I need, especially when I'm traveling. I don't have to bring a bunch of double pointed needles or anything like that. So I just really prefer Magic Loop, and especially for something like color work, I would rather have two like gaps to jump at the most, compared to double pointed needles where I might have 3 to 4. So that's just personal preference, and ChowGoo is the brand that I really like. You probably recognize that red cord, and that red cord is why I like them so much. The needle tips are great, they're sharp, they're smooth, but that red cord is just so nice and flexible. It's not too stiff, it doesn't kink up and coil on me. So I really love it for that reason. And then where's my other little needle? Is it not in here? Uh-oh. What did I do with it? I'm surprised it's not in here. I must have left it in my other bag. The other thing I like is I use a shorty. It's like worrying me now because I usually keep it all together because I hop around. So what I do when I'm at the color work portion. Again, I don't love having to jump the gaps with colorwork, so I actually use a shorty needle that's probably 10 or 12 inches long. It's got to be like 10 inches. It can't be 12. Maybe it's even 8. Anyways, it's a little short needle with tiny little short tips, and I don't love knitting with them because it's a little hard for my hands, but I do love it. It is very worth it for this color work. My tension's a lot better compared to if I'm trying to manage it on Magic Loop. So that is what I do. I switch down to a shorty just for the color work, and then I go back to Magic Loop for everything else. So those are the ones I use, and I'm sorry I can't show you my little shorty because I don't know what I did with her. I have 3 row counters in here, but I can't find my shorty needle. So hopefully that's in another bag. But that is my preference, and I'll write the name of them down here for you if you want to check them out. Lots of yarn stores sell them. All right, next question. Oh, I was just gonna literally skip a question. I did an extra question for y'all today. We have 6 questions. So I better start tightening up the ship. This is already over 20 minutes long. Okay, I am very new to drop spindle spinning. I've taken 1 class and I've been practicing. I have some beautiful just washed and put in a ball of fluff wool that I bought and then was gifted a bag of alpaca fiber. Okay, I had to wrap my head around that for a second. For someone who raises them. She said the alpaca fiber needs 1 more soak. Does that mean to literally soak it in water and then dry it? Second question, can I combine my wool and alpaca as I spin? Or before I spin? Do you have a resource or ideas for this? Also, I'm currently knitting on your Come Back Again and I'm enjoying the process. Yay! Okay, so the alpaca, I'm guessing that's what she said. If you have her contact, I might just clarify with her what she meant by 1 more soak. To me, I'm like, does she mean that it's still got some dirt, debris, grease in there that needs to be soaked out? Because I personally don't know how to do that with alpaca fiber. I've only ever done it with wool. I would assume it's a similar process. So I would maybe ask her to clarify the best way to soak it. Because that is my guess. I mean, I can tell you right out the gate, one of the things I might do is put it in a delicates bag that'll help the fiber from all floating apart from itself when you're soaking it. I like to use unicorn wash is what I do for wool if I'm washing a fleece. I would think that you could use that for alpaca as well. But yeah, as far as like water temperature and stuff like that goes, you could absolutely search it up on the internet and find answers for how to clean alpaca fiber. But I would just ask her that. That's my guess. My guess is that it's still a little dirty, and wash it 1 more time before you go to process it, and then you'll want to let it really dry completely. And then as far as your second part of your question, I can answer a little bit easier. So combining the wool and alpaca as you spin. You could do it as you spin. Depending on how dexterous you are with your spindle, you could absolutely hold your 2 fibers together, so a bit of your alpaca and a bit of your wool, and you could draft them out together. That's called parallel drafting or combination drafting. Depending on what color your wool is, what color your alpaca is, that could create a really neat effect in your yarn. But you could also combine them beforehand, and there's a few different ways you could do that. You could use hand cards. You could use a blending board. You could use a drum carder. If you don't have any of these tools, you could even buy a dog grooming brush and you could blend them together on that. Again, you can find tutorials for this all over the internet. But if you have a local fiber shop, also check in there. Some of them actually rent out their tools. You can borrow a blending board or a drum carder and you can make yourself a bat on either of those items to blend them together. You can also hand card using literally just your hands, where you're basically holding the fibers and you're doing this. and then you kind of sandwich them together, and you keep doing that again, and you can blend that way as well. So it kind of depends. Also, I would look at how different your lengths of fiber are between your alpaca and your wool, because it might be hard to parallel draft those if they're very different lengths of fiber. But try them out. Do a little like practice and see how you feel, and see what you like better. But that's so exciting. I hope you have fun with it. And yeah, I would just maybe ask for more clarification on the whole soaking of the alpaca. But my guess is that it just needs to be cleaned a little bit more. All right, next question. I am one sleeve away from finishing my metamorphic sweater. It's my first time using spin cycle yarn and wondering if you have suggestions about blocking once I'm done. I love the way sweaters come out when I start with warm water and let it cool, which I learned from watching your podcast, but I imagine this isn't advised with the multicolored dyed in the wool. I still use that method with dyed in the wool. Here is the only caveat to that. Depending on what that metamorphic is a 2-color sweater, depending on what your colors are. So let's say you went with Devilish Grin, which is like a red spin cycle dyed in the wool colorway, and then maybe you went with like white or pale gray as your other color. Maybe I would not put those in hot water together, because the only thing you need to be concerned about is color bleeding. If you still have your swatch, block your swatch, throw it in your warm water and let it cool and see if anything happens. That's the best way to test it. And then if you do see any color bleeding, I would then block it in cold water, and I would use a color catcher. But I've never had a color bleeding issue, but you do want to consider, okay, how dark or saturated is that dyed in the wool compared to the other yarn you use to knit your metamorphic. But I use that method for everything unless I notice a lot of color coming out when I am blocking my swatch. So, and even then I'm going to see, okay, there's some color will wash out still, but is it affecting the other yarn? A lot of times you might get some color coming out, but it's not necessarily going on to your other yarn. So blocking that swatch, testing it out is kind of the best way to really be able to anticipate what's going to happen. But if you are nervous, don't do the hot water. Hot water is going to help promote color bleeding. Cold water will help stop it, if that's helpful. And I will say, it's going to turn out great either way. Like if you're worried about it, I do love like the hot water to the cold, like, and again, I'm not mixing hot and cold water here. I should clarify that as I'm saying it. I like to soak my knits in very warm water, and I just like gently put them in, and I don't touch it again until the water's cool. And that's when I take my knits out, and I just find I get like a really lovely, like it really blooms super nice. And I just love how that blocks my knits. It really softens up some of my woolier wools. But you have to be careful. You don't want to felt your things, and you don't want them to bleed. But blocking your swatch will give you that information before you ever even have to worry about your finished item. All right, last question. I have been knitting a while now and have been storing my hand knits in a cedar chest. My chest is now overflowing. I am curious as to how you store your knits. Stacked and labeled plastic bins in a closet? Do you store them by fiber, warmth, favorites? Do you add anything to keep the moths away? So the main thing I would recommend you do, including in your cedar chest, is I would put every single item in its own plastic bag. And the reason I do that is because we did have a moth situation with Peter's sweater. So my husband does it. I'm in my knits all year round, especially because even just filming this every week, I always throw on some knitting. So I really am like digging in there, moving them all around. They're not just sitting in a dark corner of my closet. Peter, on the other hand, isn't going to wear his wool sweater I made him from spring through to early fall. It's just sitting in our closet, in our old closet, where his sweaters were. It was like had built-ins, and his were like in a dark corner. So perfect for moths. We also lived in, 120-year-old house. It's a really old house. So anyways, on his birthday, he was wearing one of the sweaters I made him, and we were reading the kids a book, and I had my hand on him, and all of a sudden I noticed a hole, and I'm like, what the heck? Why is there a hole in your sweater? And then I saw more holes, and it had gotten eaten by moths, which was terrifying for somebody with a lot of fiber in their household and a lot of knits, and also heartbreaking. You know, anyone who has had to deal with moths, it's really not fun. I am telling y'all, it is a snow globe outside this window right now. I might have to like turn the camera for you before we end this today because it's so magical. Okay, so here's what I learned from that experience. One, if you put each of your items into its own plastic bag, even if a moth somehow got into one of those, it's really going to slow down the progress of the damage that those moths can do. Because if they just get to go to town like a buffet on all those knits, they are going to reproduce real quickly, and it's going to get to a point that it's going to be very hard to get under control. So I store everything. I store all my yarn, all of my knits in bags. Now, I'm not going to put each of these in their own bag. I'll have, you know, some things I will double up in one bag. But it's just going to really help keep things safe and under control if a moth got in there. Another thing that I actually talked to like a pest person. Another thing they told me too is what's nice is you can go through, you can shake those bags every once in a while and check them. And what's going to happen is if any moths had gotten in, they're going to fall and you're going to see them in the bag. So it's also just like, it keeps my peace of mind because I'll go through, I'll kind of shake all my bags around, look at them, move everything around, and I can make sure that there's nothing going on. And then I just stack. So again, I wear a lot of my knits, and because of that, I want to have access to them. I want to see what I've got. So I'll have them in their bags and I have them stacked on a shelf in my closet so that I can rotate and wear them as I want. For things that I'm not wearing as often, older knits, whatever they may be, I'll store those in a bin. A cedar chest would also be fine. I will just say, again, why I'm talking about the moth prevention there is I found moths in a cedar-lined closet, in a cedar-lined room. And that was like where the most of moths were. So cedar, from what I've read, and I could be wrong, but it's one of those things where like it's great when that cedar is fresh, but what's going to happen is over time it's just going to lose its ability to really help the situation. So I also like to stick dryer sheets, like the ones that are probably not great for us, classic dryer sheets. Supposedly they don't like those. Peppercorns are supposed to be helpful. I also have lavender sachets. I don't know if any of this helps. I'm just trying my best to avoid ever having to go through the loss of another sweater. So I'll stick those in, especially in things I know I'm not digging around in as often. So yeah, that's what I do. And I usually have like a bin of shawls, a bin of sweaters, but that's about as organized as I get. But for me, it's really doing the bags and the bins, just any line of defense you can do. And if like your cedar chest sounds like one that's closed, it's going to be really dark in there, which again is kind of what critters like. So it's really good to get in there a few times a year, at least seasonally, pull everything out. Check around, do a little vacuum, rotate everything around before you put them back in. Also make sure that you're always storing everything clean. So a lot of times when we wear a sweater, we're layering it. They're not getting like soiled. They're not getting dirty. They might not be stinky or whatever. You are still shedding skin cells and things into those sweaters, and that's really what draws the moths to them. So make sure that if you are storing anything for a length of time, that you are washing it, letting it dry completely, putting it in your bag, and then storing it. And that's going to help too, because you don't want that kind of stuff. Skin cells, sweat, anything like that will kind of be really delicious for them. So that's what I do. Okay. So this has been such a long time coming. When did we finish up the last spin along? It wasn't the Traveler back in February. It hasn't been a year. Well, we did our little sock challenge. When was the last spin along wrapped up? I don't even know. It's not important because we're moving on to the next one. So I have hinted, I have said, I have promised that another spin along was coming, and it is here. We are doing a jaunty spin along. It is going to kick off, I have a little fuzzy on my nose. It is going to kick off December 16th. But the best news, what I am so excited for, is I have a partner to host this one. So I have partnered up with Becca of Daedalus Spinning Wheels, and we're going to do it together. So I'm super excited. It's really fun. I do a lot of these alone. I have a few knit alongs, spin alongs a year that I might host with somebody. But most of the alongs I host on my own. So when Becca reached out and was like, hey, would you want to do a spin along together? I was like, oh my gosh, yes. I would love to have a friend to do this with. So I'm so excited. Okay, I even have the information right here so I don't forget. But sign up for my newsletter. It's going out tomorrow. Nope, it's going out today. Today's Friday. Don't worry. I'm going to send another one. Today's the 12th. Oh my gosh, it's going to start next week. I'm telling you, time goes too fast. So if you're already a newsletter subscriber, check your inbox. You may have already seen the email. Today's the last day of the Ooey Gooey mitten sale. But I also am sharing the spin along information in there. If you are not signed up yet, now is the time to sign up, and I will be sending out another one on Tuesday because that's the kickoff day, is December 16th. So we are going to do it from December 16th to June 16th. So we were kind of thinking about 3 months to spin, 3 months to knit, what have you. That being said, you don't have to be a spinner to join the jaunty along. You can just be a knitter, totally fine. My goal is always to include as many people as possible. Like if you don't spin, no big deal. If you still want to have a spinning vibe to it, there are people who sell their hand spun. So you could always try and snag some hand spun to still knit your jaunty. But we're going to spin and then we're going to knit, and we've got 6 months to do it. And we have really good prizes. I'm so excited for the prizes. So I'm going to share those in the newsletter. But I'm also really excited, y'all, because I'm going to be spinning for mine on my very first Daedalus wheel. I have been so curious about these wheels. I have actually DM'd people on Instagram being like, so tell me about your wheel. Because I've always been so curious, but had never tried one out. And I always wanted to get over to their booth at Rhinebeck, but Rhinebeck tends to be really crazy. So I'm so excited to try these out. So many of my friends who spin on these wheels love them. They are incredibly unique because you can flat pack this wheel up, and it's light. So you can actually really travel with it. I just ordered myself a battery so that I can travel with it. And this is so dorky, but I just started playing with this. As you can see, I don't have a lot going yet. And this isn't my yarn for the spin along. I have it, maybe it will be. I don't know. I'm definitely going to do a combination spin because y'all know I love my 3-ply combination spin. But can I just say, one of my favorite things about this wheel, which is probably really dorky of me, it's this. So this is the Starling, but do you see this little nub? It seems so simple. You might not even notice it, but here's the thing. Whenever you need to walk away from your spinning, you generally don't want to just like leave your fiber chilling. Like it's going to start, the twist is going to start to go into your fiber supply. You need to put it somewhere. And so I've tried adding like a little Velcro situation that I can like stick my yarn to. Like I had a clip. I've clipped some before, wrapped around a clip. Y'all, look. Da, da. You have no idea how this little silly thing is bringing me so much joy. Oh my gosh, it's so clever. Such a simple solution, but those are the things to me that matter. So anyways, I can't wait. As you know, I've been very distracted with my sewing journey, which I am loving. but spinning really has gone to the wayside in the past 6 months for me with all of my work travel and everything. I just wasn't really maintaining my spinning time. So I'm so excited to bring my spinning back into practice because I have really missed it. And there's just something about knitting with hand spun. There's just nothing else like it. It's just so special. So anyways, I hope you will join us. I'm really excited to get this going. Jaunty has quickly become one of my feel good, I need something comfortable and relaxing, comforting is the word I want to knit. That Jaunty has definitely jumped into that line right along Harlow and DRK Everyday Socks. This is Hello Yarn Fiber, by the way, if you're curious what I was just spinning with. But yeah, I'm so excited. I hope you'll join us. And I think that's it. Thank you so much for spending, good gracious, 40 minutes with me. If you've stuck around till now, thank you. I'm sorry for being a little long-winded today, but I hope to see you back here next week. If you would like to ask a question, feel free to do that through the link below. And have a great weekend. I hope you get to make something worth spending all weekend decorating Christmas cookies and playing in the snow. So I can't wait. If you are a newsletter subscriber, make sure you check the Thought You Might Like section of this past Tuesday's newsletter, because I give 3 of my favorite holiday cookie recipes and they're so good. Love them. It's like the main time I bake every year is around the holidays. Okay, I gotta go. You gotta go. Have a great day and happy making.